Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Shaw joining you for this edition of Date at 8. And, of course, some big highlights to talk about as we extend over the next 24 hours. Rain makes its return across the area tomorrow. It's going to be a washout as well. We could pile up quite a bit of rain over the course of 24 hours. And at this point, tomorrow night, we're still dealing with some rain, even continuing. But by Wednesday morning, a lot of it comes to an end. So, of course, we're going to jump into Futurecast and break down the timing of the rain, how much we can pick up. And from there, well, dry weather resumes, but we're going to be talking about a cool down that's going to be upon us for the remainder of this week. I'll let you know just how much cooler it will be as we go through this weekend. So a lot to break down, a lot to discuss for this edition of Nate at 8. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Without further ado, let's jump into things. And again, that washout, we're going to be watching the rain returning, how much rain we can get. Dry weather resumes, but how much cooler are we going to be? So again, a lot to break down. So our current temperatures right now across the area are falling from the 80s back in the 70s to even 60s. A lot of our cooling that we're going to get tonight is more for the first half of the night before our skies do turn cloudy. High temperatures today, mid-lower 80s. This was our warmest day of our 3-day stretch of highs 80 plus, 81, 82, 83, ironically, at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, one day to the next. But yes, our 83-degree high, the warmest of this 3-day stretch at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, in general, an unseasonably warm stretch of weather. Not record-breaking, but certainly closer to the record high than the normal high, which is in the upper 60s for this time of the year, much closer to that record high in the upper 80s over the past 3 days, past couple days with respect to that normal high in the upper 60s. And talking about these 80-degree high temperatures in the month of October, and it's something that typically we at least see one or two of in over recent years for us here in the Ohio Valley. In October, typically an 80-degree day or two is what we see. We did go here recently in 2022 without seeing a single 80-plus degree day for the Wheeling area, but typically we get a couple. Notice 3, again, our stretch of 3 for this year so far for this month, 5 back in 2023, 8 back in 2018, and 3 again in 2019. So typically at least 1 or 2, you start to get past 3 or more, and it starts to become more rare of what we've seen over recent years. But this consecutive stretch of 3 or more days is a little more atypical than what we had just in general, adding up our 80-degree days. And during this same stretch, even as we extend over the past 10 years, we go back to 2015. And here's a look what's on record of 3 or more consecutive 80-plus degree October days. And you can see we had one, of course, with this stretch. 2023 is when we had 5 days in a row, 2019, 3, and 2018, 5. That was it for 3 or more. So over the past 10 years, this is only the 4th time over the past 10 years we've had 3 or more consecutive 80-plus degree October days. So extremely rare, no, but certainly not typical to get this long of a stretch of 80-plus degree highs for our area into October. But in general, some 80-degree days is not uncommon. It's pretty typical, at least 1 or 2 every October. Stretch of 3 or more, a little more rare to deal with than what we've had. So putting into perspective some of the warmth that we've had over the past couple of days, because as we look ahead, we are nowhere near as warm as we've been. Even for tomorrow, we notice a big cool down. Those high temperatures tomorrow afternoon are struggling to get into the 70s. I can see it where a lot of us remain in the 60s because we deal with cloud cover and we deal with occasional rain, and that could really limit how much we actually warm. So it likely going to be struggling to reach into the 70s going into tomorrow afternoon. By Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are into the 60s, but by this weekend, we can reach back to around 70 degrees as we see much more seasonable stretch of weather. And these 80s that were in place, I do not foresee coming back into next week. And in fact, not only looking into that following week, so that takes us into the middle of this month. If we look into that following week, next Wednesday is the 15th. And even if we look into that following week, into that following weekend, the 18th and 19th, we have both our European and GFS models, one of the two most common, popular long-range models, and both are hinting at a pretty potent trough, which would deliver a shot of cold air going into that weekend, 18th and 19th. So not only can we not see another 80-degree high here over the next week to even 10 days, we could get even colder. I think we can get even colder and into the 19th with the potential not only for more widespread frost, but even the potential maybe we could even get close to freezing. We'll see how potent that trough is, but that could be a shot of some really chilly air and really cold air for this time of the year going into the 19th. So we'll see. That is what I'm keeping an eye on the horizon. So not only I don't foresee a warm up coming our way as we get into the little latter part of October, I think we can get a shot of even colder air. So, in general, these even 70 degrees is a little bit above normal. So, in general, still more seasonable to above normal, but I think we could even get a shot of some cold and well below normal temperatures towards the 19th. So we'll see. But certainly both models are jumping at it. So we'll see if that shot of cold air comes to fruition. But something worth mentioning, that's for sure. Austin, good evening. Glad that the weather is finally going to feel like fall. It absolutely is. Yesterday, I saw a squirrel running across the electric power line while I was on my front porch. What an interesting sight there, Austin. Thank you so much for joining, as always, on this evening, Austin. And yes, I certainly feel much more like October for the rest of this week. And certainly didn't feel it like with these 80s. Let's see. Johnny says we have great games. Still a Big Red versus Toronto Cousins, Toronto Red Knights versus Monroe Central, Harrison Central versus Bel Air. So some great games coming up this week. And how about weather for Big Red at Toronto and Harrison Central football games? Asking about some forecasts later this week. And by the latter part of this week, we're good. Getting into Thursday, Friday, later this week. In fact, it's sunny. It's getting back to what we had the past couple of days. Now cooler, but it's sunny. It's going to be gorgeous. Lots of sunshine. No worry about any rain going into the latter part of this week. Make sure you turn it in on Friday. I'm live streaming high school football game. Football Fever says, and a lot of questions about the football games coming up. And again, by the time we get into Friday, it's going to be gorgeous. This is really a one-day occurrence with this rain this week, and then we're likely drying right back up into the weekend. But that being said, quite a bit of it is going to be returning, and we're already watching some showers before that more steady rain breaks out for tomorrow. And we're seeing some of those showers now into the southern and western portion of the Buckeye State. So we'll watch these showers push into the area, and again, we'll see some showers break out overnight, and then we trade that in for more of a steady rain as we extend into tomorrow morning. So now's the time. I know we're dealing with some clouds spilling into the area, but for the first half of tonight, it is our full moon, October's full moon. It is known as the harvest moon, getting its name from, being the time of the year where farmers typically harvesting the last crop before it turns colder. The full harvest moon again for tonight. It's the first super moon of this year, and super moon meaning that it's a full moon that's occurring near the moon's perigee. So that's the point where the moon is closest to the earth in its orbit around Earth, and makes it appear a little bit bigger and brighter. Peak illumination will be occurring closer to midnight tonight, 11:49 p.m. And again, I know we're dealing with a cloud spilling in. It's going to be less than desirable conditions, but if you can get out and see it early on tonight, it's going to be the best viewing conditions, because again, skies turn cloudy overnight, and we're even dealing with some showers. So less than ideal, but hopefully you can still catch a glimpse of this early on tonight as we get back to Futurecast. Yes, we will see these skies turn cloudy, and there's our showers that will be breaking out as we go through the night, especially closer to and after midnight tonight. That's when we'll deal with those cloudy skies, and there's our showers. Now notice the showers taper, and we'll see more of that steady rain. So less of a shower activity, more of that steady rain going into tomorrow morning for the morning commute. So just be prepared, have the rain gear handy with you, and it's less than desirable, because just look how occasional this rain is all day long. It's needed, it sure is, but we do worry some that it could be a bit excessive for some locations. So it's needed, but hopefully it doesn't come to fruition. But there is a potential for some localized flooding, because this could be not only fairly steady for a lot of the day, but it can be heavy at times. And where we see some pockets of heavier rain set up, locations can easily get 2 inches plus of rain going throughout the day, and maybe even closer to 3 inches plus. We'll see how much some locations can pile up, but I think there's good odds that at least some locations get 2+ inches of rain throughout the course of tomorrow, and really piling up that potential for rain again with some heavy rainfall rates of an inch or more an hour are possible. So maybe some rumbles of thunder, not anticipating a severe threat, but maybe some rumbles of thunder with some pockets of heavier rain. And just we'll have to watch for it. We can read some real heavy downpours at times. And where we're seeing this heavy downpours with this fairly consistent rain throughout the day, does yield some concerning for flooding. Not anticipating a widespread flood threat, right? It's going to be more localized or isolated, but unfortunately, we do run that potential as we go through tomorrow, for that potential for some localized flooding concerns. Now into tomorrow night, it continues, but notice what starts to happen late tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. Rain, well, makes its exit. Maybe something lingering early Wednesday morning, but by Wednesday morning's commute, a lot of this rain is done. A lot of it's done, maybe all of it, but a lot of it's certainly done by Wednesday morning's commute. And what does remain is likely done by Wednesday afternoon. So a lot, if not all, of the daytime Wednesday is likely dry. And at this point, we're seeing a decrease in cloud cover. Sun breaks out, but it certainly doesn't help warm us, as it's going to be much cooler Wednesday, highs in the 60s. And that's the same story Thursday into Friday. A lot of sunshine, but it's much cooler, still in the 60s. We'll get back closer to 70 Friday, but still likely holding the 60s. By this weekend is when we're back to around 70. We'll be back to a mix of sun and clouds, but we do likely stay dry even for the weekend. But at that point, we'll see those temperatures start to climb back closer towards that 70-degree mark. And we'll also have to watch out as we do extend into a series of mornings, as we do extend, as you can see, if I go back a little bit, how chilly it can get into Thursday as well as Friday morning. Later this week, we're going to watch not only some cool days, but these are some chilly mornings, and we could be talking at least some patchy frost potential coming our way later this week. So just be prepared. You're going to maybe want to layer up a little bit, at least for some of these mornings. And again, it's certainly a far cry from the 80s that we are coming off of. And in that regard, a little shock to the system. Some of these mornings coming off of these highs in the 80s later on this week is, again, we can dip into the 30s for a couple mornings later this week, starting into Thursday morning, and again going into Friday morning. So we'll see, but certainly have the potential to dip at least just into the 30s, if not dealing with the temperatures cold enough to deal with some patchy frost looking ahead going into that stretch. So in terms of the rainfall amounts, so again, upwards of an inch of rain likely across the area. On that more localized scale is what I was discussing, where we could see close to 2+ inches of rain. Again, 2+ inches, I think is possible on a localized scale. And that's where we have that potential then to unfortunately deal with some flooding. So still a lot across the area, 3/4 to 1.25 inches. That can be our widespread rainfall amounts as we go through tomorrow. So again, it is certainly a washout. We're going to be piling up quite a bit of rain. And again, some of these showers start even tonight, but that steadier rain builds in by morning hours tomorrow and then continues even into tomorrow night, before by Wednesday morning's commute, a lot of it tapers off. So we look at the excessive rainfall risk. This is a product issued by the Weather Prediction Center. And you'll notice that highlighting our whole area under that potential for flooding, unfortunately. And that marginal to slight, when we break down what exactly that means, when we break down those categories, this still means that the threat is still mainly localized. So even in that slight risk, you'll notice that it's still isolated to scattered, mainly localized. So it's still more of a localized concern instead of dealing with anything more widespread, like the moderate to high risk. It's still more localized or more isolated for the most part when we're talking about the flooding concerns. So nothing widespread of a flooding threat concern coming our way, but it more of a localized, just dealing with some pockets of the heavier rain where we see some of those higher amounts in our area. We can deal with some flooding concerns. And again, a lot of these locations affecting places that can experience rapid runoff, urban areas, roads, small streams, washes. These are the areas we're going to be watching for, and more of a localized threat. Just a good day to keep weather aware. And download the Severe Weather T9 mobile app. Have that way to get the warning through your mobile phone, TV, social media or internet, a radio, especially a weather radio. If you can have multiple ways to get the warning, and keep weather aware. You'll be less caught off guard if a warning were happen to be issued, and if you live in a flood prone area, to be able to seek some higher ground in the event of dealing with a flash flood warning that could be issued tomorrow. So good day to keep weather aware. And like I mentioned, once we get past tomorrow and we deal with that washout and pile up a lot of rain, again, a lot, if not all of this, is done by Wednesday morning's commute. A lot, if not all of Wednesday during the daytime, is likely going to end up dry. By Thursday, Friday, into the weekend, the rain threat is non-existent. So it's our one and only day where we're likely dealing with rain for this week. And it's right back to some dry conditions and much more seasonable temperatures, much more cooler with respect to the 80s as we go throughout this week. Highs in the 60s. We may even hold 60s tomorrow. I definitely think that's a potential. I think it's going to be a struggle to get into the 70s. We could get to 70, but I think in general, it's a struggle tomorrow. And we could very well hold in the 60s. It's already going to be much cooler tomorrow with respect to the 80s today. But from there, we hold 60s, even lower 60s Thursday. But 60s Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, back to around 70 Saturday, Sunday, mid-lower 70s going into the middle of next week. And then into that following weekend is when I was discussing that we have the potential to deal with a shot of even colder air. So we could be even colder than the 60s with that shot of cold air if it comes to fruition. Again, we have both of our more major models hinting at that same potent trough digging in around that time. And that's just a shot of cold air well below normal temperatures would likely accompany it. And we'll see if it comes to fruition, but certainly something to always, as a meteorologist, to raise a little bit of alarm bell when you're dealing with two models fairly consistent, showing that even though it is far out, it's certainly something to keep a close eye on. So that's what we'll do, certainly, as we get closer to that time period of getting closer towards the 18th, 19th. So into that even following weekend, not this weekend, but that following weekend. Certainly something we'll keep an eye on. Hello there, Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. Asta says, what's the biggest rainfall that October has ever experienced in one day? So you're looking at the October rainfall over one day. Let's see if I can look that up real quick for you. It's an interesting question. That is for sure. An interesting question. So let's see if we can look that up. We'll look that up real quick. And Football Fever saying goodbye from Winterville. Goodbye, football. Thank you so much for tuning in for this edition of Nate at 8. And certainly was a lot to discuss, a lot to break down for this edition of Nate at 8. And again, going to be certainly much cooler tomorrow. Let's see. So 2.45. So 2.45 looks to be it. And that occurred on October 2nd. 2.45 inches. That is the answer. So 2.45 inches, over 2 inches of rain in one day occurred on October 2nd. So that is how the biggest rainfall for the Wheeling area. Dylan, God bless. Well, thank you, Dylan. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. So we get a lot coming our way here over the next couple of days. A lot of rain tomorrow. Going to wash out. Keep the rain gear handy. Unfortunately, going to need it morning and afternoon. It's going to be one of those days. It's tough to get going. It's dreary. It's cool. It is wet. It's less than ideal. But once we get past tomorrow, it turns sunny again Wednesday. It's sunny Thursday, Friday. It feels a lot more like October. If you've been hoping for more of a fall-like temperature, more seasonable temperature, this is it. And Terry says, need the rain. Yes, it certainly is needed. So grass is still crying. And yes, Terry, it is certainly needed. We're getting some needed rain tomorrow and then drying right back up. And it seems like that's been the pattern as of recent. I know the last time we dealt with a 4-day stretch of over 2 inches of rain into that last full week of September. But it does seem like we're getting in these long dry stretches, and then we're getting to picking up a lot of rain over a short period of time, and then another long dry stretch. And I will see you. I'll see if that continues after this, likely settling into another long dry stretch again right after we deal with this rain tomorrow. So picking up a lot again, upwards of an inch or more across the area. Some locations where there is that localized flooding concern, likely 2+ inches of rain. So a lot of rain over the course of tomorrow and tomorrow night. Then drying right back up Wednesday. Sunny skies break out. A lot more sunshine Thursday, Friday, and a lot more seasonable temperatures. Much closer to the normal high for the rest of this week with respect to those 80s that we just came off of this weekend and today. So a lot more seasonable temperatures coming our way. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. I hope you have a wonderful day and soaked up the rest of these 80s. I'm going to say goodbye to them for quite some time now. We'll see if we can sneak in at least one more, maybe towards the tail end of this month, maybe beginning of November. We certainly still can at least get one more 80-degree day in November. So we'll see. Might not be the last of it, but certainly here, at least near term, over the next couple of weeks, I think there's a good chance this is the last 80-degree day that we just experienced, at least over the next couple of weeks, as I even shot a colder air into that following weekend. So I don't think we're going to be warming up into that following weekend. And we're looking at next Thursday, 10 days out. But if we go into that following weekend, I think it could be a shot of even colder air, not warmer, not 80s. So we'll see how long it takes if we can sneak in another 80-degree day coming our way. Yeah, of course, you can catch me coming up News 9 at 10 on Fox 9 News 9 tonight, 11 for the latest. And as always, the next edition of Nate at 8, we're going to be breaking down some rainfall amounts and seeing how much is left to track. We'll at least see some likely around this point tomorrow. So we'll be discussing, again, the tail end of the rain that we're dealing with across the area. Any impacts, and hopefully we don't see any, but of course, breaking down any impacts, flooding concerns in the area as we go throughout tomorrow. So make sure to stay tuned for the latest with that. And again, keep weather aware. Have multiple ways to get those warnings. Download the Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app. Keep ahead of that weather tomorrow, especially if you live in a flood-prone area. Don't get caught off guard. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the next edition of Nate at 8. Until then, have a great night.